Today's forgotten hero is a man who said, "Give me Scotland or I'll die." That was a man of vision. That was a man of passion. Do you have such vision for your nation? He was also a great reformer. His name, John Knox. Today we're at St Andrew's Castle in Fife, which played a really important role in Knox's life. Knox was born in Haddington, a few miles east of Edinburgh, around 1510. He was considerably influenced by the martyr George Wishart, and he was his bodyguard for several months until Wishart was executed just here at St Andrew's Castle. He was one of the first Protestant martyrs. Knox's life was in danger, and so he spent the next 15 months going around the country avoiding arrest. In 1547 he came here to St Andrew's Castle, where other reformers had fortified themselves in against the authorities. He started to tell people something about the thoughts that were going through his mind on Reformation theology, and people liked what they heard, so he was asked to preach on the subject. Knox spent several days praying and seeking God as to whether he should do this, and finally he agreed. But when he started to preach, he was preaching against the whole papist system. Up to then, reformers had been talking about reforming the Catholic Church, not replacing it. His preaching caused quite a sensation. But then the authorities attacked the castle with the help of a French fleet, and they captured it, killing many of the occupants. And those who survived, including Knox, were made galley slaves. And he was a galley slave for 19 months. After his release, he went to England, and he preached there for the next 5 years until 1554. His preaching was really popular, and England was in the middle of the Reformation. Edward VI was on the throne, and everything was about reform. He was even offered the bishopric of Rochester, which he declined. But then Bloody Mary came to the throne, and Knox felt in danger, so he left for Europe. And he spent 2 years going around France, Germany and Switzerland, meeting many of the reformers from Europe, like Calvin. Returning to Scotland, Knox found that the seeds that he and other reformers had sown had clearly done their work. He wrote, "If I had not seen it with my own eyes in my own country, I would not have believed it. The fervency here is more than anywhere I have been." When in Edinburgh, he managed to persuade some of the leading nobles to give up going to Catholic worship or Mass. And they showed their resolve by taking communion from Knox. The first foundations of the Reformed Church of Scotland had been laid. The bishops were angry with Knox, and so he left Scotland again, this time going to Geneva for 4 years. He went back to the church that he'd started on his last visit. He read a lot, and he must have refined his theology, as Geneva was a melting pot of reformers. He was also a contributor of the Geneva Bible while he was there, which became the most popular Bible in England. Knox was the man sent by God to lead the Reformation in Scotland. His devotion and passion, his sincerity and honesty, his magnanimity and courage, his skill in theological debate and his political insight, together with the fact that his name brought terror to the bishops, all marked him out as the chosen instrument for his country's deliverance. Some of the lords and the merchants and traders were the main supporters of the Reformation. And when Knox returned, the lords decided that they would bring the Reformed Church into every area to which their authority extended, as long as a majority of the people agreed. It was arranged that Knox should go to St Andrews to set up Reformed worship there, but he was threatened by the Archbishop that he would be shot if he did so. However, he came here and he preached 3 times in succession, but not a hand was lifted against him. The magistrates and the people came together and they unanimously agreed to set up Reformed worship in St Andrews. The church images and pictures were removed and the monasteries were pulled down. And the example of St Andrews was duplicated in many other places in Scotland. The Reformation had begun. That year was one of incessant Herculean labour for Knox. His days were spent preaching, his nights writing letters all over the country, stirring up the nation. He kept it awake. His voice, like a trumpet, rang across the land, firing up the lukewarm to passion and inspiring the timid to courage. Parliament declared in August 1560 that Protestantism was going to be the faith of Scotland. John Knox made it so, in fact. He died in 1572, but not before he'd set out the structure for the new Reformed Church. Presbyterianism. There were many battles ahead to establish this new faith, but Knox had laid a large part of the foundation stone. What a remarkable man he was. John Knox had a passion and a vision. Some people say he was the greatest ever Scotsman. Other people criticize him. A friend of mine recently was with a Scottish minister and they were watching a tour guide talk about John Knox, and she said things that were not true, and she then spat on his memorial. Her spitting is completely indefensible, but she probably remembered that Knox had written a paper against women monarchs. And it's understandable that he wrote this, because he had Mary of Guise, who probably wanted him dead, and then there was Mary Queen of Scots and Bloody Mary in England, all of whom probably wanted him dead. So it's understandable. There is a danger in these days of identity politics that people will change history for their own agenda. Just because I'm standing here talking about John Knox or any of my other forgotten heroes, do not automatically think that I'm telling the truth. You must go away and check it for yourself. These days, all media is extremely biased, so never accept anything you hear as truth. God has given us Holy Spirit to help us discern the difference between the truth and a lie. Use him. We need John Knoxes to rise up today, men and women to be trumpets in our land, to fire up the lukewarm and usher in a new spiritual reformation to transform the United Kingdom.